Hey, anyway.
With that, now that we've done our bullshit banter,
Yep.
and we have eaten crow, we can move on to some proper topics, right?
Let's do it.
So the first
I'm already going to go pee.
por-
It's a bad situation.
portion one of today's show, right? Part one of our theme of watching the left fail, right? It's going to be a whole day of watching the left fail. First theme is some examples of why the left hates you, right? The first example is Russia and Ukraine. So,
Oh, my God. Okay, I'm going to go pee real quick because
Yes.
I got stuff to say.
yes. And so the reason here, and I'll give a prelude, I guess, that this is under why the left hates you is because they are explaining the Biden administration is displaying that they are more than happy to Yodi, come on. More than happy to send our sons to die and not give a second thought about it, right? So what we'll do is we'll go through a timeline. And I say, let me pause here. I say our sons because the last foreign war that our government got us into, we were there for 20 years. My son just turned 3 years old. 20 years, he'll be 23. So there is every possibility that if another world war is to begin or another forever war like we just got out of is to begin, there's all likelihood that my son is one of the ones that could go and fight. So I don't say your sons, I don't say their sons, I say our sons because it could be mine. So we'll go ahead and we'll go through a timeline that I have here. This was actually from Al Jazeera. So this is just a timeline of events from this recent conflict. And we actually have touched on this briefly throughout the last few episodes, just kind of mentioning it off bat of when Russia started to amass troops on the Ukrainian border, and there started being more and more, and then they started moving military equipment. Excuse me.
It's been a long road,
Some
too.
tanks, some things like that. So this is just kind of a brief timeline here from Al Jazeera, and this is from the 13th. Hello, Kitty.
Kitty.
Oh, got her. This is from the 13th, so it will be updated as of then. There has been some things over the last few days that we'll get to after this. So November 2021, satellite imagery shows a new buildup of Russian troops on the border with Ukraine and Kiev. Says Moscow has mobilized 100,000 soldiers along with tanks and other military hardware. December 7th, 2021, U.S. President Joe Biden warns Russia of sweeping Western economic sanctions if it invades Ukraine. December 17th, 10 days later, Russia presents detailed security demands to the West, including that NATO ceases all military activity in Eastern Europe and Ukraine, and that the alliance never accept Ukraine or other former Soviet nations as members, which, as the diplomatic talks begin, proves to be a non-starter for the United States and for NATO. Setting these deep red lines that Ukraine and other Soviet states can never be accepted into NATO is a red line for the United States. It's a non-starter. They're unwilling to negotiate past that point. So we'll get more into this as we go on. January 3rd, 2022, Biden reassures Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky that the U.S. will, quote-unquote, respond decisively if Russia invades the Ukraine. The two men spoke on the phone to discuss preparations for a series of upcoming diplomatic meetings to address the crisis. January 10th, 2022. U.S. and Russian officials meet in Geneva for diplomatic talks, but differences remain unresolved as Moscow repeats security demands that Washington says it cannot accept, which is what we just talked about. NATO puts forces, this is January 24th, NATO puts forces on standby and reinforces its military presence in Eastern Europe with more ships and fighter jets. Some Western nations start evacuating non-essential embassy staff from Kiev. The U.S. puts 8,500 troops on alert. And this is a few weeks ago. You may remember seeing headlines that Joe Biden had, like we said, or like Al Jazeera reports here, had put 8,500 troops on alert. They had put them on like the next level of readiness to be deployed for NATO uses if the need arose. And so some of them were, I know, from the Joint Base, because that was a really big story around here. Joint Base Lewis McChord is a huge base, obviously near our area, and so some of the troops are from there. A lot of troops that go overseas come from the Joint Base because it's so enormous.
Yeah. I would say, just real quick for context, when we're talking about NATO countries, pulled up the quick map here real quick, of NATO countries in Europe anyways. And, so you got everything from Turkey as it comes through to Romania, Slovenia, Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, those particular nations being very, very, very close to Russia as compared to a few. And you'll notice right through here, right where Ukraine is, not a member of NATO. So EU, but not in NATO. Oh, that's these guys. So some of the Yeah, that's interesting. EU countries that aren't in NATO, like Norway or Sweden. That's Sweden right over here. Interesting. But yeah, there you go. There's a quick little rundown of your NATO countries compared to Russia. Yeah, there's Ukraine right there. That's a cleaner map.
There you go.
And that is No, that's not Poland. What nation is that?
I'm not going to guess. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, that's all right. Anyways.
So you can pull up a different map. But
yep.
So we'll move on here. January 26, 2022, Washington presents a written response to Russia's security demands, repeating a commitment to NATO's open door policy while offering a principled and pragmatic evaluation of Moscow's concerns. January 27th, the very next day, Biden warns of likely Russia invasion in February. China throws its political weight behind Russia and tells U.S. that Moscow's legitimate security concerns should be taken seriously. So this, I think it's important to note, it says that the Biden administration warns of likely Russian invasion in February, right?
Yeah.
We've heard this ever since then.
Yes.
We heard earlier this week, Wednesday is the day. Wednesday, it's definitely going to happen on Wednesday. Wednesday comes and goes. Yesterday, Joe Biden says, definitely in the next week or coming days, it's definitely going to happen, right? I'll send you a video when we're done with this timeline of what the press secretary for the Department of Defense 2 weeks ago is seemingly making up intel while he's there of, we have evidence that intelligence that we're declassifying right now as I'm telling you about it, that there's going to be a false flag video that's going to come out to try and proceed Russian invasion into Ukraine.
And that poor reporter was like, well, can you prove it?
Right.
And he was like, well, I am right now by telling you.
Says that's not intelligence. That's you telling me that something you think something is going to happen.
And he did not.
Yes. So
he could not. And I don't know if it was the fact that he could not legitimately understand that by him standing on the podium and saying these things that we don't believe him necessarily, or if he was literally trying to cover because they don't actually have proof.
Right. Do you have Signal pulled up on your computer?
I do indeed.
Cool. I'm going to send this to you.
Okay, we could do this. Signal.
Yeah, just so that it's there. I'll finish the timeline and then we can read it. Let's see here.
Got that shit pulled up. Cool. Every time I open it on my PC, I have to update the app.
Oh.
And I don't know. I think it's just that
security purposes, I think.
Well, I think what it does is security for one, obviously, yeah, because long-haired, super granola country hippie that's obsessed with security.
Yeah.
Make sure. And then it also catches up your texts.
There it is. So let's see now. January 28th, the very next day, Russian President Vladimir Putin says Russia's main security demands have not been addressed, but that Moscow is ready to keep talking. Ukraine's President Zelensky warns the West to avoid creating panic that will negatively affect his country's economy. And what he was referring to is we talked about just a few days earlier that some nations had started to take their diplomats out of the country. The United States started to take its diplomats out and told the people they should. And a whole shitload of other countries in the EU said, don't do that. You should not be doing that. There's no reason for this to be happening. I believe it was Vladimir Sminsky that said some of them are safer in Kiev than they are, in L.A. Yeah. Like, I don't know why they're doing that, right? It doesn't.
Well, because from the White House, I mean, from American standpoint, the White House, I mean, they have been like pleading with people to leave Ukraine. Any civilians over there, any contractors, anybody that's there of their own volition to leave now. And they've been saying that for like a couple weeks now. When a geriatric president of the United States is like pleading to these people to leave Ukraine, doesn't give off a good message, especially if you're Ukraine. I mean, like, bro, there's nothing going on here. It's all going to be all right. Don't tell everybody to leave. Because if you're telling everybody to leave, you're just creating more panic for the world.
Right.
And but we've been doing that for weeks on end at this point.
Yes.
And we're the only dumbass motherfuckers doing it. And I don't know, maybe that's just because I think we can all look at President Joe Biden's history on foreign policy, and I think we can all agree that he has made every right decision foreign policy-wise. I'm being very, very sarcastic ever since he got there.
We will get to that.
Welcome to the salt of the streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought. Hope you ready to eat everything.